Will you call the roll, please?
Director Bilodeau?
Present.
Director Duane? Director Green? Yes. Director Wynn? Director Sarmiento? Director Sheldon? Director Vanderbilt?
Here.
Director Whitaker?
Present.
Director Yo. You do have a quorum.
Mr. General Manager, are there any items received too late to be agendized?
There are none.
Great. Now is the time for visitor participation for items that are not on the agenda, or if you would like to address us on any items that are on the consent calendar. I do have a few speaker cards before me. And if anybody else would like to put in a speaker card, please fill out one of these orange cards and hand it to the clerk. And I will start with Mr. Lair Pierce that would like to address us this evening. Mr. Pierce, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Lair Pierce here for the Cadiz Water Project. I noticed in your agenda package there was an article on a study that was paid for by the Mojave Desert Land Trust, which is an organization that opposes the Cadiz Water Project. That study claims that the project would adversely impact Bonanza Spring, which is a desert spring that's 11 miles away from the proposed well field, 1,000 feet above project operations and 1,400 feet above the aquifer. The peer-reviewed science in the EIR, and which is upheld by the California courts, agree that the spring is hydraulically disconnected from the Cadiz aquifer and will not be affected by pumping. The opposition study fails to account for the most recent peer-reviewed hydrogeological conclusions about Bonanza Spring in a study by Mojave Desert geologist Dr. Miles Kinney. The fieldwork that he conducted identified two faults that converge right at the point of Bonanza Spring and create an underground dam that creates a catchment area of 3,250 acres, which is sufficient to provide the recharge necessary to keep the spring flowing. The opposition study does not include any site-specific geological mapping and only relies on water chemistry analysis and to assess the attributes of the spring and the groundwater in the system. The Kinney study was peer-reviewed by 5 independent professionals, presented to a group of 12 experts in geology, hydrology, and hydrogeology, including the former chairman of the U.S. Geological Survey. Director. All concurred with the study's conclusion that Cadiz operations cannot affect Bonanza Spring. The opposition study speculates that the project might adversely affect the spring, but makes no conclusions other than recommending monitoring. The Cadiz Water Project already includes exactly the kind of monitoring that they call for, and it actually goes farther, monitoring the entire watershed, not just the spring. We're already monitoring the watershed as required by the EIR mitigations and the groundwater management plan, and the County of San Bernardino independently enforces the groundwater management plan and actually has the authority to halt the project if there are any indications of distress at the spring, or if we pump lower than an 80-foot drawdown at the well field. In short, the Cadiz Water Project will protect the desert environment, including Bonanza Spring, while conserving 10 billion gallons of water annually that is currently evaporating away in the Mojave. And in doing so, we'll create a new water source for Southern California. And I'm going to provide your clerk with a copy of the study, which you can read then if you're interested. Thank you.
And thank you very much. I have 3 speaker cards on item 25 that's on the consent calendar, so I suggest we consider that separately and maybe take up the rest of the consent calendar first.
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the balance of the consent calendar. If you'll please use your electronic voting device.
Motion carries 9-0.
Great. So that'll bring us to item number 25, which is the Groundwater Basin Storage Operational Strategy Review. I have 3 public speakers. I guess I'll call the speakers up. First up, I have the Honorable Director Pierce Swan. Mr. Swan, good evening.
Thank you very much. On item 25, there are a number of concerns that IRWD has, and We've communicated them numerous times in written letters, and I want to reiterate them again tonight because it doesn't seem to have done much. We're concerned about the proposed decrease in the levels, in the management levels in the basin that are being recommended and, to be studied. We think lowering the basin ought to be maintained as high as possible without flooding out Huntington Beach or others. You have more than enough management tools to keep that from happening with differential basin production percentages. We're also concerned that you're not allowing or proposing not to allow anyone else other than the SARCUP and the MWD to store any kind of vacant, space in the basin under rules that would have them lose that water if they can't take it out if the basin suddenly was starting to fill. Of course, our priority would be to the basin people first and other people second. Number three, when you have a management strategy which says that when it hits a certain, depth on your groundwater basin where it goes below a certain storage amount, and you're required to, reduce the basin pumping percentage, that there should be some recourse if the board, decides in its wisdom to increase the pumping when the policy would dictate differently. There's no benefit of having a policy if there's no way that you can easily circumvent that policy. And we're concerned that, SARCUP, you're talking about giving 35,000 acre feet of storage to SARCUP, which, I'm sure you understand would fill in a very slow rate because it's only half the surplus San Bernardino Valley water. Met gets half, you get half. All the people who participate in it get half and share that. So it would fill very slowly. So there would be a lot of vacant storage in the basin. We would like to have more of a dialogue with policy people when in this study process we think it runs counter to keeping a full basin to maintain reliability in the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next we'll have Merrill Masheri. There you go. Good evening.
The not so honorable. I missed that. Good evening. My name's Merle Masheri, and I'm speaking on behalf of Residents for Responsible Desalination. I'm here to request that item 25 be taken off the consent calendar to be presented by staff tonight or at some future date. Some of our members have read the staff report, and as ratepayers, they feel they're confused and find a need for further explanation. Some of the questions that they had were just what is staff recommending? On one hand, the 2007 overdraft policy needs to change. Why is that? Is it to increase the annual overdraft? Someone asked if that shouldn't have been done before increasing the BPP to 77%. On the other hand, the recommendation seems to reduce the BPP to avoid an overdraft that has occurred or is about to occur. What's real? How is this going to affect our rates? Overall, most of us find basin storage exceedingly complex. The public, we feel, needs a better understanding of the matter. We don't have the foggiest notion what is meant by flexible guidelines as it relates to this matter. And it seems that it really is too important just to be left to a committee, and we would like to see further discussion. And we would ask you to honor our request. And on behalf of our organization, we would like to express our condolences for the passing of Director Anthony.
Thank you very much for that. Next up is the Honorable Debbie Cook, former mayor of the city of Huntington Beach.
Never honorable, never politically correct. I liked your your picture you had up there earlier. That was nice. It was a nice addition. I'm equally concerned about this item. I'm really I guess I'm not surprised. I'm wondering who hatched this idea. I just doesn't seem like something that staff would bring forward. And then on items 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, I didn't see anything in the staff report that provides any analysis, any justification, any costs. What is it going to cost to do all these things? And I'm also curious how many people are actually at the Water Issues Committee. And if everyone here was not there, then it just seems to me that you should give the presentation so they can hear it, they can have the advantage of that, and then the public can as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Wow. June Lopez, please.
Good evening, June Lopez with Molten Miguel Water District. I know we started talking about this last year when we first came to you with the request to look at the studies to identify if any opportunities, if any, could exist of OCWD and the North County working with the South Orange County to ensure reliability and manage this resource in a much more regional way. And so part of what we talked about was doing this update to get a better understanding of the condition of the basin. And I did have a chance to be here at the Water Issues Committee, and it was a very comprehensive presentation. And from what we understood, that this new proposed level was something that you had in place years ago. So at one point, OCW did have that same target. So that was very educational for South County agencies. And we really appreciate the work of the board and the staff to really progress on this discussion about how we can further collaborate and not look at this from a North or South County, but to do it in a much more collaborative way. And I think there are a lot of opportunities, especially now. And so we hope that this will be the beginning of further discussions and evaluation of how we can work together to benefit all the communities of Orange County. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. I have two other speaker cards, but there's not an agenda item number on them. Mr. Netterhood, did you want to speak on this item or just general comments? General comments. Okay, then we'll just wait till after the item's concluded, and then we'll go back to that. And Glenn Brooks, is that about this item or general? Okay, we'll wait then on yours. Okay, so that is all the cards I have on item number 25. So we'll bring it back to the board and staff. Anyone want to kick this off or have any general comments at this time? Don't all rush forward at the same time. Mr. Sheldon, I caught you looking at me. You looked at me, so you got to speak first.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Vanderbilt.
Yes, so just in regards to some of the comments from the speakers, does the comments from the speakers tonight add any additional information to the staff in terms of their recommendation?
No. I think the presentation that we gave to the board at WIC and what's contained in the packet reflects staff's judgment and would not change that recommendation.
Okay. Director Sarmiento? Are you finished, Director Vanderbilt?
Yes.
Okay. Director Sarmiento?
Thank you, Mr. President. So I do recall this being at WIC previously, and it was, I believe, sent back to staff because there was a proposed MOU, and I think more information was necessary. I think that's what the maybe not the consensus, but the majority of the committee wanted to see. So I think doing a study, a follow-up study, making sure we understand this a little bit better is going to help all of us be able to deliberate. And I think Molten Miguel came before us and certainly had some thoughts on how to proceed. But looking at this a little further, I think there's nothing binding here. There's nothing but more information that could be provided, and I don't see anything wrong with that. So I would support that. And I know we did have a very robust discussion because I think a lot of us wanted additional information. So I think that's a path staff is putting us on. So thank you.
Great. Director Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I made the motion just for the purpose of getting the conversation going. I do want to state, as Director Sarmiento stated, this has been going on for over a year, if not longer. We've had this is not our first meeting on this as a board. Certainly, we've had more than one WIC meeting on this. This has been vetted and discussed by many parties. So I feel that this is a good result of what we've discussed, and I would like to go forward with the staff recommendation as my motion was. But this is certainly not a new item that it just got pulled out of the air last week that someone put on the agenda. It's been going on for a long time and has had a lot of discourse and meetings and discussion.
Great. Director Yo.
Thank you, President Bilodeau. Just one point of clarification, if I might. On second page of the item, that table, is that the existing or proposed actions for consideration when the condition reaches a certain threshold?
That's the existing.
And the new one is to raise up to 77% of BPP? I heard one of the speakers, maybe I heard it wrong.
Yeah. No, it's more or less to move those limits down by 50,000 acre-feet.
I see.
I think if you look at the last page of the staff report, it actually has a strikeout table, the same table with strikeouts. And I think...
yes.
Oh, thank you for the clarification.
That's actually the operative part.
Yeah, and so... Okay, got it. Yeah, I was looking at the first table. It was a bit confusing that, you're maintaining the BPP and at the same time try to reduce overdraft. That's kind of conflicting. Mm-hmm. But this one brings clarity. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Director Nguyen.
I have a question for staff. This staff report includes the concerns that Director Swan had sent to the district?
This is an independent analysis, I think, of what the IRWD letters, they express their concerns about what we were proposing, but that doesn't change staff's recommendations. We believe that the study that was done by our hydrogeologists that are contained within these reports reflect proper basin management principles, and that's why we're bringing them to the board.
Okay, thank you.
And Director Green.
Yes. The committee recommendations really were expanded at WIC, and some of the studies that we need and want. And I think that those studies will make things a lot easier to understand and see where we're going and what's happening. Because I agree, it is complex. That's why I think it's come to WIC, 2 or 3 times? So as a result of that, and at every one of those meetings, there was a lot of discussion. So it's not like there hasn't been a lot of discussions and a lot of changes from where we first started to where we're at now. So I think it's important to do these studies and to move forward so everybody can have more information. And I would like to call up Mr. Herndon, our chief hydrologist, because I have a question for him. Hydrogeologist. Do they even give that license? Do they still give that license out?
They're very sensitive about...
Do they still give that license out, by the way, the state?
They do.
Okay, good. All right, just checking. They don't. It's geologists they don't give out anymore, right?
Geologists, they do.
They still do?
In fact, you need the geologist before you can get the hydrogeologist. You first have to be the geologist, and the hydrogeologist is a subspecialty.
It sounds like traffic engineer to me. So, anyways, yeah. So, Mr. Herndon, I just want to ask you, do you concur with these recommendations?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and you feel this is a prudent way for us to manage the basin?
Yes, I feel comfortable with the recommendations, yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you for
Any other
your
questions while
testimony,
I'm
sir.
up here from anyone?
Anyone
Thank
else
you.
have any questions for Roy at
That's
this
the
time?
question all of us wanted to ask.
That's what I want to know.
What's your registration number?
Yeah.
4817.
Oh, okay.
Geologist 113.
Great. And let's see, Director Wynn, I think, had a question.
Another question for staff, and this is for our attorney. Do you see any legal issues that might come up as to this agreement?
Yeah, difficult to know this time. I think the proposal is for have it on it, yeah. The proposal is for the evaluation. I don't, it's probably premature to evaluate the legal issues. There are potentially legal issues. Yeah, there's a whole framework that we have to follow pursuant to the OCWD Act, but at this point it's probably premature to identify what the legal impediments are likely to be, if there are any.
Wow, that was very clear, that answer.
Well, I
Okay.
like to keep it real.
There you go. A true lawyer. Okay, with that, we have no more requests to speak, so we have a motion and a second on the table, and I'll ask someone to use their electronic voting device at this time.
That motion carries unanimously, 9-0.
Okay, before we take up item 33, I had two more speaker cards that were on general items, and I'll go ahead and accept those. The first one is the Honorable Al Netterhood. If you can come to the podium and address us, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Al Netterhood. I'm the board president for Yorba Linda Water District, although tonight I'm here as a citizen. And now that the Poseidon meeting from a couple weeks ago is over and some of the energy is dissipated, wanted to just remind the board about some of the key items that I think are worth revisiting. And specifically, they're captured in the Clean Energy Capital Report from 2014. I don't know when the last time it was that you read that, but it's actually a very powerful and insightful document that really creates a lot of clarity about the Poseidon situation. And I'm going to run through some of the key items, and I'm going to give the page reference as well for those of you who would like to take notes and really want to go back, but I'd encourage all of you to read it again. First of all, on page 5, it mentions that the RA will go up at least $100. Now, that was 2014. My expectation is that'll probably be closer to $150. On page 6, it highlights the fact that the capital charges are backloaded, which will significantly increase the cost of the project. The new term sheet did not address that. The analysis recommends that it be straight line for significant savings. On page 7, it mentions that Poseidon consistently underrates the cost of the per acre foot. And I think a great comparison is Carlsbad, because it's currently running at $2,400 an acre foot. Page 8 says a 3% annual increase in met water costs will mean that Poseidon costs will never be less than the met water. Page 9, Poseidon is a mirror of Carlsbad in design and construction and operation. So again, looking at that as an example of what's going on, I think is really key. Page 17, there's a list of 10 risk factors that OCWD will take on. Every one of them is very significant. Page 23, it says that the operating costs for Poseidon will be higher than they are in Carlsbad. Page 29, purchasing Poseidon water will increase the OCWD budget by $130 million. That's the adjusted figure for inflation. And finally, one of the questions that came up during the Poseidon meeting was, what was the return of investment for the Poseidon team? The word was used, guaranteed. Well, there's no guarantee in the terms and the analysis, but it's very clear on page 39 that they are expecting a 12% return on their capital investment. So all of those are factors, and that's just in the first 40 pages. I think the total document is well over 100 pages. I would strongly encourage each and every one of you to go back and reread that. To my knowledge, none of those things have been updated. They definitely need to be reviewed and updated. I thought the clean energy people did a great job. I'd encourage you, with the money that you're spending, to bring them back to the table and ask them to do an updated analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next I have Glenn Brooks. Welcome, sir. Is there an S at the end there?
There's an S.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here in front of everybody. I was doing a little bit of investigation late this afternoon and came up with something that I wanted to present to the board. I'm going to read from a annual report dated 2017. I'll tell you who it's from, but I'd like you to hear the character of this company. Government investigations and anti-bribery and corruption. Our policies and procedures designed to ensure compliance with applicable laws, including anti-bribery and corruption laws, may not be effective in all instances to prevent violations, and as a result, we may be subject to related government investigations. I've read a few annual reports in the past. I've never come across a paragraph like this before. It goes on, we are from time to time subject to various governmental investigations, audits, and inquiries, both formal and informal. These investigations, regardless of their outcome, can be very costly, divert management attention, and damage our reputation. The unfavorable resolution of such investigations could result in criminal liability, fines, penalties, and it goes on listing a few other sanctions. There is an increasing global focus. I thought this was interesting. There is an increasing global focus on the implementation and enforcement of anti-bribery and corruption legislation, and this focus has heightened the risks that we face in this area. Particularly as we expand our operations globally, we are subject to a number of laws and regulations governing payments and contributions to public officials or other third parties, including restrictions imposed by the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Different laws and regulations that are applicable to us may contain conflicting provisions making our compliance more difficult. If we fail to comply with such laws and regulations, we could be exposed to claims and damages, financial penalties, etc. This is Brookfield Asset Management, who owns Brookfield Infrastructure Partners, who now owns Poseidon. It seems to me this company is admitting that they have risk factors with corruption and bribery concerns, and I'm concerned that as a constituent of the water district, we seem to be getting in bed with a company that has questionable ethics. And I'm going to be looking into this a lot more further. Again, this took me 45 minutes to dig out. So I will leave that to you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all we have for speaker cards. So that'll bring us back to the agenda. Items for consideration, item number 33, which is the proposed name change of OCWD's main laboratory. And Mr. Dwayne would like to address us.
Thank you very much. Just in reviewing the item, we all miss our friend Phil greatly, and as a chemist, it seems more than appropriate to name the laboratory in his memory. And so I just had a suggestion for the consideration of the board that it not just be the Philip Anthony Laboratory, but perhaps we include the adjectives water quality, so reading the Philip L. Anthony Water Quality Laboratory. And then I previously discussed with Mr. Marquez briefly the $15,000 appropriation necessary for the laboratory signage and commemorative bronze plaque, and he assured me that that was plenty to take care of the task at hand. So just wanted to suggest that for consideration of the board. I'd be happy to make a motion if it's the pleasure of the board to do so.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Why don't we go ahead and vote?
Motion carries unanimously 9-0.
Very good. Well, that brings us to item number 34, informational items. The Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority activities. Director Whitaker.
No report.
Okay. Number 35, the Water Resources Summary.
Information is contained in the packet.
Very good. 36, Committee Conference Meeting Reports. Property Management, Chair Sheldon, do we have any activity to report? Great. In Communication Legislative Liaison Committee, Chair Sarmiento.
Yes, the information is reflected in the packet.
Great. In Water Issues Committee, Chair Green. And Admin and Finance, Chair Dwayne.
As submitted in this evening's board packet.
Very good. Any reports on committees, conferences, meetings attended at district expense? Seeing none. Verbal reports, President's report. Just wanted to remind everyone that this Sunday at 4 p.m. there will be a celebration of life for Director Anthony at the Rose Center in Westminster, and the public is invited to attend, and I hope to see a few of you there. Oh yeah, and if you could RSVP, that would be fabulous. We do have something on the website of the district. Phil's widow is just trying to get a head count for catering purposes and such, so that might be helpful. And that's my report this evening. General Manager's report.
Nothing to report.
Director's reports. Would any directors like to report anything this evening? Seeing none, General Counsel report.
We do have a closed session. Okay, yes, we have a closed session this evening for a conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8 for real property, 4 parcels listed on the agenda.
Great. So we're going to go into closed session. Do you think we'll have anything to report out, sir? Do you think we'll have any report out of closed session?
I do not believe so. I mean, it depends on the results, but my understanding is there will likely be no report out this evening.
Okay. At this point, we're going to go into closed session. Thank you for attending.